Hello, my beautiful people. Welcome to your Jupiter through the human design perspective and through the signs video with myself, Raphael from Radiant Reality. And of course, I have a special guest here today. Many of you who have been with me long enough will have seen I've done tons of collaborations with Denise. And I have to say, she really is, as far as I'm concerned, the best at what she does. So if you like human design, if you are interested in human design, Denise is a dynamic human design expert who looks at all of the human design and obviously the transits of the planets through that perspective. She has a wonderful YouTube channel and also a website. And for those of you that know, if you've seen the human design oracle deck that I use, Denise is the creator of that deck. And I find myself and think of myself very lucky to have been gifted a set of those. So Denise, without further ado, please tell everybody where they can find you and say hi.
Well, thank you. That is a beautiful entrance. I appreciate that so much. It's like you threw a red carpet in front of me. So thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah, anybody who's interested in human design, you can check out my channel, HD with Denise Mathew. Basically, I've got pretty much everything you need to learn about human design. If you're just a brand new beginner, you don't know anything about it, right up to if you want to start kind of using the transits in your life, which a big deal. Which can be a big deal to kind of much like astrology. And I do have a full community page where I talk about the transits of all the planets and I do a daily post. So, that's where I'm at.
Awesome, brilliant. So you can find it. I'll make sure I include a link in the video where you can find Denise as well. Make sure you head over to her channel, hit the subscribe button, and let's settle into it. So obviously today we are here to talk about Jupiter, Lord of blessings, abundance, expansion, and growth, moving into the sign of Aries. So this is a big deal because up until now, Jupiter has been moving through signs that have been somewhat challenging for us to experience. You know, Jupiter moving through the sign of Capricorn was in its fall. You know, that was a challenge in and of itself. Then Jupiter moved through the sign of Aquarius, and obviously all the time it was moving through the sign of Aquarius, we also had Saturn in there as well. So Jupiter wasn't really able to expand or to grow as much as it likes to, or even really to bring the opportunities as much as we could. It wasn't until Jupiter moved into the sign of Pisces where he picked up a whole lot of dignity, because that's his ancient ruled sign, that he really then started to do some of his best work. You'll have to forgive me. I do like to personify the planets as masculine and feminine and kings and goddesses and queens and stuff, just because that's a little bit of me. It speaks to me in that way. That being said, as Jupiter is going to dip into, we're just going to get a little bit of a taste of what the transit of Jupiter moving into the sign of Aries is going to mean for all of us. So on May the 10th, Jupiter is going to move into the sign of Aries, and then we'll go retrograde and we'll come back into the sign of Pisces on October 28th. So we've got quite a long while of this transit, and I think it's enough to give us a really good sort of taste of what this is going to be like and where it's kind of where it's going to really bring something new, something different, and also something dynamic. So let's look at some of the symbolism. We're going to be talking about Jupiter, the planet of growth, expansion. Jason Miller of Strategic Sorcery talks about Jupiter as offering vastness. And I think this is really, really important to think about our minds and the way that things expand. So I see Jupiter as a wise philosopher, sage king, who really takes our mind and broadens our horizons, but also gets us to see that what is in front of us can either be perfected or enhanced or made more or bigger than it is. So I affectionately call Jupiter the opportunity whore. Excuse my language, just because Jupiter will tend to throw opportunities at us and it will give us loads of them. And the challenge with that is a lot of the stuff, it's kind of like, you know, when you go to a store and somebody loads your hands up with lots of this different stuff, eventually you end up dropping something because there's just too much of it. That growth and expansion that Jupiter offers, that different perspective, that higher mind, you know, we're talking about philosophy, belief structures. I don't even necessarily see this just as religion. I see the energy of Jupiter more about connecting to something that gives you faith and helps you understand that you are more when you connect to something that is bigger or more vast than you are. It gives you an internal space in some way, shape, or form. That energy of Jupiter, the planet of growth, expansion, luck, blessings, also offers a protective element. This is something that a lot of people don't talk about with Jupiter. It does bring a protective kind of energy. And it also gives us the energy of, what's the word that I'm looking for? I want to say sovereignty, but that word's kind of been hijacked recently, as you well know. But yeah, it gives us a sense of our self-sovereignty. It gives us an understanding of how we are more than we appear and more than we even believe or understand ourselves to be. Now, when you're thinking about the sign of Aries, for me, Aries is the sign of the self, right? This is all about me. It's about my identity. It's about my ego. It's about, and when I say ego, I don't necessarily mean in the, you know, my ego and being puffed up and stuff, although we may see demonstrations and a lot of posturing because, you know, Jupiter into the sign of Aries. But it's more than that. It's a newborn energy. It's the energy of spring. It's the energy of life expanding and exploding out into the world. When you think about the energy of spring, it's unstoppable. Nothing stops, nothing rests in spring. It just moves forward, ever forward. Now, as Jupiter's passing out of the 12th sign of Pisces, where it's made us more spiritual, it's brought us more humility, it's made us more compassionate, it's expanded all of those things, and it also got us, you know, back out into the world and moving. Where it's kind of tapped into that energy of we think as an us, Jupiter moving into the sign of Aries is going to start to really get us to really re-identify with who we are now. And I think that part of this is really important. And I'm going to mention something that comes up later, but mention it now. When Chiron moved into the sign of Aries, I think a lot of us really began to acknowledge our own hurts, our own wounds, our own traumas even, and really started to talk about or understand that it was okay to talk about where we were actually vulnerable. The Aries being the sign of the self and Chiron being the wounded healer, or the thing that allows you to grow by acknowledging that there is you know, some form of damage there. Why is that important? Because Jupiter also represents healing. It's the healing balm, the healing salve. So as it moves out of that 12th sign into the first sign of the zodiac, Jupiter is starting a brand new cycle, and all of us are being renewed, refreshed, possibly even protected in that area in some way, shape, or form. And then finally, I really feel that this dip into Aries is also going to give all of us a good understanding of where we need to make space in our lives, because there is more. There are more blessings. There is more abundance. There is more knowledge, more wisdom, more personal power. This could be a really wonderful time for all of us. Do I believe it's going to have some drawbacks, like, you know, Aries being a martial sign and all? We may see some spikes when it comes to do with things like the law, the military, you know, people expanding those things within their countries or within their own borders, etc. Totally possible. I also think this is going to, in a healthy way, really reconnect us to our sense of self, but from the point of, I've been that compassionate self while Jupiter was in Pisces. I remember that, and I'm integrating it into this newfound sense of self where I can expand but not have to step on anybody to do so. So just a little bit about how that might be experienced for all of us on that macrocosmic level. Denise, talk to us about the human design and how this is going to play out.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the themes that you're talking about really are sort of pointing a finger in the same direction with human design. We're going to be looking at two different gates. So if we look at the key words that we went through when we were going through Pisces, Jupiter and Pisces, the keywords were abundance, the keyword abundance, family, doubt, grace and charms, crisis and chaos, and also innocence. So the innocence is going to be carried over. There's a gate called the gate 25, and it carries over between, it like straddles both Aries and Pisces. So we have a little bit of those energies mingling, and that's exactly where we're at sort of as we move forward in a couple of days. We're mingling those energies. We're mingling the I with the basically the fluidity of all of us. I know Aquarius is really about, humanity and the group, but I think that with Pisces, it really is this idea of just, there's no beginning and there is no end. It's just kind of like everything is flowing together. And then we have Aries saying, no, my flame is here, and this is where I'm going to start to make my mark. So and absolutely, I agree completely with you. And I think it was really interesting how you mentioned Chiron, because Chiron is going to be playing a big part through human design as well. As of I believe the 24th of May, it will be going into the gate 51, which will make a full channel with Jupiter. And it promises to bring some interesting events, I think. Now let's talk about the gate 25 right now. Exactly. It's called innocence. So there's a lot of different iterations that we can get with every different gate. And, we could pull them all out and sort of lay them on the table and say, okay, well, it could be this. One is that when we talk about the innocence of the gate 25, it is this concept that we are out in the world being who we are, doing what we do, and we're innocent because we're not saying, oh, is someone watching me when I do this? Is someone watching me when I open the door for that individual? Is someone watching me when I, take someone's groceries to their car or something like that? Instead, we're just actually actively just being ourselves. We're walking in the path of who we are. And that's what it is. It's this innocence. Now, to stay in that innocence in a world of Instagram and influencing and trying to get that right shot, it can be challenging. So what this is saying, it challenges us to be who we are, individually who we are, to be true to ourselves, to do what we do because it is the right thing for us to do, not because we're getting praise. Now, I also look at it as is because Jupiter in this energy can actually, it is pretty neutral, but we do have other transits. Venus will be going through as well. And, that could be those moments where, is someone watching me? Am I going to get that perfect shot? I've even heard of people on Instagram, like taking, pictures of them helping. There was someone who was doing that, a reporter I'd heard about, that was actually making a shot, and she wasn't really doing anything, but it just looked like she was really involved. So there could be those kind of things. But the way I look at it is, even if you're doing something to get a shot, as long as you're doing something, it doesn't matter. So there's no downside to that. That's one side. And that's where we come from the innocence perspective. The other perspective is that you see that there's that light, right? And it's in the darkness. So this talks about our scars. This talks about our wounds. This talks about all the things that we've gone through, our battle scars. And this initiates us with the gate 51, which will have that full channel from the 25th until I think about the 1st of June. That will give us that full channel, and it's called it is the gate of shock, the gate 51. But the shock, the shock comes in, and it shows us a new reality that we hadn't seen before, something that we didn't know about. And after we see it, we can't actually go back in time anymore. It's like a before and after. Exactly. So if you look at that image, you see there's a tornado, but there's a rainbow right behind it. And that's the whole perspective of it. This also gives us willpower, this ability to withstand whatever the universe pushes toward us. And so those are the kind of, energies that the gate 25 will be showing us. We do have the gate 17 as well, but I'll hold off for a second. The other thing I just wanted to mention is the new keywords that we're going to be going into, and this will go right into 2023, because we know that it's not just going to be for 2022. Jupiter will be in Aries for 23 as well. The words are innocence, like we were just talked about, opinion, control, initiation, which is the gate 51, and closing and difficult beginnings. So those are the kind of energies that we are going into. And I mean, I think that, is it going to be a walk in the park? No, but I think that there is so much that can be gained. And I think there's a really cool connection with the gate 17, coming up as well. I'll talk about that in a minute or so. But yeah, so that's my perspective. And that really is going to just kind of make us look at the hard parts of what we've been through, make us look at our scars. And only through walking through the fire do we get to that cool pond, where we can step into the cool pond, and we can let go of all that stuff that's been with us for too long. Because wounds, they can be there, but let's keep them closed. Let's keep them healed, right? Instead of always opening up every time something triggers us or something happens. Like, have a true healing of the wounds. And this is where we have an opportunity.
I love that. It's so brilliant. And I kind of want to work retroactively from that, because this is something that's come up before in readings that I've done for people, where I've said to them, if you're healed, be healed. Don't look for, because the very act of looking for something that isn't healed is likely to open up that scar, is likely to poke you in that space that is probably newly healing, right? When your bone fuses back after breaking, you don't kind of knock on it to see if it's healed. You just kind of let it get on with it. I love this. And just to touch on some of what you mentioned, because I feel like it was really apt. When you were talking about the innocence, the first thing that came to my mind was living on purpose, right? Not because someone's there with a camera, or because it's virtue signaling, or you might get props for it. Like, scrap all of that. Just live on purpose throughout this transit, and you'll get the most out of it. I really feel like this is, because Jupiter's soul stuff as well, right? And I really feel like it could be that. Also, another thing that came to mind when you were talking about this was, the picture of the old lady. She's like in a crowd and they've all got their phones out, and she's just sat there watching what's happening. Yeah. That really spoke to me of that. Like, it really hit home. And then also what you mentioned about this was, the way that you show up as long as you're doing something. Who are you when nobody's looking? What are you doing in those moments? What is your intention? What is your push towards healing? Love all of that. The shock energy, I liken to this.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. Right. Like, as soon as I saw this card, when I first got the deck, I was like, oh my gosh, that's the Tower. And it really is. And we always say to people, when this card shows up, everybody knows, right? Okay, the stuff's about to hit the fan. It's going to get a little bit challenging. But I always say to people, once the dust has settled and the rubble has cleared, whatever or whoever is left after the Tower can be 100% trusted, because it's survived that moment. So this Jupiter transit, yeah, absolutely, for all of us could, shake a few things loose. But then when you were talking about the pool and the healing salve, this came to mind. Right. And the star card, for all of its other meanings, can represent a time or a period of healing, because it's the card that literally follows the Tower in the tarot. So I love that. Just, yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much.
I love that they're connected too, because the gate 51 is the opposite, is the harmonic to the gate 25, which is the star and the Tower, if you're doing the analogy. So I love that they are connected. I mean, the numbers aren't the same, of course, but they're connected. So yeah, it is a time. And yeah, I mean, nobody wants to look at the ugly parts of life that have happened to us. And I think that if we can look at those, like you say, those wounds, and really heal them for good. And I mean, I know what that feels like. I mean, I had things, with people, and, I'm all finished with that. And then something would happen, and it would just open a big floodgate. Eventually it did heal not immediately, but it healed completely. And when that happens, it is a sense of freedom, because you have this detachment from it. You see it, but you don't have to be involved with it. And I think that is part of being alive, like having these things that happen. And there are things that are really important for us to be a part of, and we have to be a part of. But then there are a lot of things that we don't have to be a part of. There's drama that we don't need to step our toes into, but yet we do. And then we get all upset about it, and we have an opinion. And this is where we're moving into Jupiter going into opinions. And this is where we have all these like opinions that could be, we could be inundated with. And the whole point of an opinion is that we have this concept of, so we're moving, when Jupiter moves into the gate 17, it will be moving in, let me just double check. It will be moving in on the 2nd of June. So it's not very long away. But it will be staying in the gate 17 for a very long time. So the one thing that I thought was really interesting about this opinions is that the gate 17 is that not the harmonic, but the opposition. Now in human design, we have the mandala very much like we have with astrology, the whole, chart. And what we do have is we have the opposing gates, or the oppositions, play a big part in the energy of melding. So for instance, if you have the gate 60, which Pluto's going through right now. And I talked about this before, but I'll just throw it in again. You have the gate 60, and the gate 60 is about limitation. Okay. How do you transcend that limitation? Well, you transcend that limitation by imagination. You go into your imagination until the reality of your imagination becomes manifest in this world. You see what I mean? So we have those two themes that play in. I look at, for instance, Eminem, the singer, like he's an older singer, but people still know him. Growing up in a really hard life, he had the gate 60, and I think his son or something like that, and his opposition was the gate 56. What did he do? He wrote stories, he wrote lyrics, and he sort of lived through his rapping so that he could escape the limitations. And eventually he did become whoever he is. And I'm not saying he's a perfect individual, but he's a great example of how we can use these two energies together. So a long-winded story is in 1973, Pluto was going through the gate 18, which is the opposition to the gate 17. The gate 18 is criticism. What it says is that this doesn't work anymore, this pattern, because these are actually logical patterns that we're talking about now. We're moving from individual energy, which is really like this existential in the now moment. Who am I? Who do I want to be in this moment? How am I going to present myself to the world as myself? Exactly. The gate 18 is perfection. You see that there's problems with the patterns. And this is great energy, because if we don't have, the gate 60 exactly, which is where Pluto is in transforming it. If we don't have somebody to come in and say, yo, that doesn't work, we need it fixed, a lot of things could break down. I mean, this is what has our infrastructure. This is what puts your buses on time, So when you want to get a bus, if we didn't have logic, we wouldn't have buses on time. So when that was happening in 1973, it was, you could say, transforming, because any of the bigger planets, I always call them bigger planets, but the slower moving planets like Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto, and those planets basically they're always kind of mutating or shifting up the other planet, the other gate, you could say, the opposition, which would have been the gate 17. Now, this is controversial, but I don't have a side on either side. I'm not really making a judgment on anything.
Don't worry. They're totally used to it. I've got a potty mouth and all sorts, so they're good.
Oh, it's not a potty mouth, but it's, I guess you could say it's my potty type of mouth. But anyway, it is about this new, this leaking of the papers that we heard about, the Roe versus Wade, and a very big topic that is getting brought up to the surface again. This was actually decided in 1973 when Pluto was going through the gate 18, which is the opposition of the gate 17. So this means that I feel as if the gate 17 is going to be a really big energy. Exactly. Those are the oppositions. It's going to be a big energy because we're looking at it from the 2nd of June going right into 2023, this energy. This is basically looking at organizational energy. And so you think about Jupiter, right? Expansive, really big. Now, I like Jupiter, but I don't love Jupiter because I think Jupiter is like the Midas touch. You could get too much of something that, like Jupiter is equal opportunities. It will say, yeah, I'll give you everything you want. And I'll give you more and more and more of whatever you don't want too. I'll give you abundance of what you don't want, and I'll give you abundance of what you do want. I can give you an abundance of everything. And I think that when we see that perspective, we can understand that Jupiter is not always going to give us everything we want. A little Saturn is not going to hurt anybody. A little Saturn gives us, this whole idea of throwing all the metal into the furnace and what comes out is gold. I mean, that Saturn, makes you work, but you get something amazing out of it most times, or Saturn will just leave you alone, which is what most of us really want. So ultimately, I'm sort of, I like Jupiter, but I don't think that Jupiter will solve all problems, because Jupiter can be excessive. It can take us to places where it's just a bit too much of everything. And I think that Jupiter in the gate 17 will be a bit too much of these unmarinated opinions where everybody has an idea. This is the like and dislike button that's going to be full throttle being spoken, because of the nodal energy that we have right now, which is the 4323, which is an opposition. This gives everybody a voice to just basically say whatever they want to say, which is always amazing. Yeah. But when you have this opinion going to be, clicking in, this means that everybody's going to be giving their opinions. It doesn't mean that it will be a fully formed opinion that actually has some value, because opinions, for a lack of a better word, are an unproven hypothesis. So you think of the gate 17 is an opinion or an unproven hypothesis. The gate 62 gathers all the information and puts it into, you could say one is a computer program. So you have a theory about a program, that's the gate 17. The gate 62 puts it into a computer and says, okay, let's run it, see if it works. What's wrong? What isn't wrong? And that's how we figure out if a hypothesis will work. But what we have is we just have all these computer programs being plugged out into the world and not being tested. And what does that mean? It could be a little chaotic, because everybody's going to have an opinion. And there could be a lot of this trying to order people in, and I don't mean order as in ordering people around, but to a degree, yeah, trying to say, well, this is the rules that we're going to make, and you will listen to them. And potential for protests. I think there'll be protests. Yeah, practicality, because you gathered the details you need to support this hypothesis. A hypothesis that you just, immediately goes from your head out to the world is not going to be fully formed. And that's what they call these energies from all that part of the body graph, or from us, is really basically something that needs to marinate, or it's clarity over all time. In other words, you're always getting a little bit better about what it means to you. So that's what I see for the gate 17.
I love that. And it's brilliant. There's a few things that you mentioned there that really hit me. So Jupiter, Aries being the sign of the self. And when we think about Aries energy, it's forceful, it's direct, it's straight in, head first, let alone feet first. It's just all in and all in. There's no sort of off switch, like I mentioned with the unstoppable power of spring. That's what you're talking about. The distilled essence of springtime is Aries. And with Jupiter being, the expansion, the energy to grow or to magnify something, yeah, absolutely. We can see people spouting off. We can see people chucking stuff out. I think there's going to be probably a few, like in the old cartoons, where the back pedal, something was running really fast and then a back pedal. I think we're definitely going to see a few of those and a few faux pas. It totally tracks. And I agree with you about what you said about Jupiter. This is something I forgot to mention in the overview, but very, very important. If Jupiter is hitting a malefic point in your chart, or it's hitting something particularly sensitive, when we think about Jupiter, we're talking about growth and expansion. So we're also talking about proliferation. Cancer is a metastasis of cells, right? That just keeps growing and growing and growing until it overtakes the host body and makes it sick. So when we talk about Jupiter, and this is why I said, like, opportunity hawk, just going to give you everything, right? All of it, all at once. And well, that's okay. It kind of reminds me of, I saw a documentary about the, the monks when they become Buddhist monks. Yeah. And in order to help them detach from the world, they get given, at meal times, they get given one single bowl and everything goes in there. Your soup, your main, your cake, your custard. And I was like, oh no, not for me. And he said, right, this is one of the ways that they teach us to desensitize ourselves from the external world and to realize this is feeding me. It's doing what it needs to. Don't be attached to the food or the sensation, etc. Totally not for me. but a very good tool nonetheless. And I kind of see this Jupiter thing in the same way. It just gives you an abundance or an excess of everything all at once. So yeah, I totally get that. I love the opinions card, because when I get this for myself, I'm always reminded that maybe, just maybe, what I think is probably a little bit off. And if I get this for someone else, then I try to remind them the world may not agree with what you're about to say. So, you know, be aware that there's probably going to be some pushback from this. So yeah, absolutely. And then when you were talking about the drama and getting sucked into things, believe it or not, the card that came to mind was the Temperance card. And interestingly enough, this is actually ruled by Sagittarius, so therefore it's got Jupiterian energy to it. And that is where, you know, when this card shows up, it reminds you to bring that sort of temperance or that balance in. So yeah, love it. That's all I wanted to add. Oh, and Jupiter, in terms of the manifesting, sorry, was the bringing things to ground. So if Jupiter gives us that sort of higher energy of thinking bigger, thinking broader, being able to dream something and then bring it to ground, that when you were talking about the full channel, I wonder if that's what it's going to be. So a lot of our ideas, it's like, okay, now I understand how I can make this real. It's not just a dream anymore. I've chucked it around a little and I can start to build some steps towards it.
Yeah, I mean, this is where we speak this energy, and when we say, this is what I think can happen. And that's when, you know, basically things can start to work, because we are getting we do get the voice for it. The key with this energy is to always understand that if you're just going out and giving your opinion to everyone, I guarantee you're not going to get what you want. People are going to be offended, right? So somebody's struggling with something, you know, they're trying to hammer a nail into the wall, and you can see that they're doing it wrong. They're doing it sideways, and you just say, oh, you know, you're doing it wrong. And what do you think they're going to say? They're not going to say, oh, really? You think I'm doing it wrong? They're going to be less than, you know, appreciative. And it depends upon who it is. They could be extremely unappreciative or just kind of whatever, ignore you. But ultimately, if somebody is really struggling with something and you say, do you want my opinion? And I've taught my kids this the same way. And I'll say it to them. I'll say, do you want my opinion? And they'll say no. And then I'm like, okay, now I have to zip my lip. I can't say anything. And I can't, because I have to be true to what I believe is to be the case, because they're not going to actually take what I have to say properly. But when they say yes, and I tell them my opinion, then I know it's actually got the best circumstances. It's the best growing. I got the best soil. I got the best seeds. I've got a little bit of sunlight and rain, and hopefully it will sprout. I don't know if it will. We can't ever guarantee it, but at least we know we have all the best circumstances. So when you are giving your opinions, and it might be the absolute best opinion in the world, make sure you have the right conditions, because you want to have that seed planted in all the best circumstances.
I love that. That guys, if you're watching this, that is a tool. Take that on board. As Jupiter moves through the sign of Aries over the course of this year and then comes back into Pisces, if you've got something to add, ask if your opinion, if it's wanted, if it's warranted at this moment. And, you know, just brilliant. Such a tool.
It is a tool. I agree. And I've had to use it a few times, and sometimes you have to be quiet. It's hard, but you get your time. You will get your time to speak. And I think that is the biggest deal about this. But I think we have a lot of potential, like I think with the 4323, which is the nodes that we're working with now, and we're working with that until into July. This is what I call it Steve Jobs and Steve Jobs energy, where it's these brand new mutative ideas that have an ability to start to gain traction. And I think that within a year's time, we're going to see some really amazing brand new things showing up in our universe. And the gate 17 can be part of it, because this is logic. This is like new patterns, new organization. And the highest version of the gate 17 is this idea of those who wish to lead learn how to serve as well. And this is where we are saying to our leaders, saying, okay, yes, you want to lead us, but how can you serve us? And that's another underlying, like I told you, there's so many iterations of every energy. This, on a global perspective, this is saying, okay, you want to lead us, you want to organize us, you want to have some sort of a pattern that we can all fall into, where we are feeling like we want to be in the pattern. But most times what happens is you have this pattern is kind of put on people, and it's basically this idea of you will fit in this box and you will fit in that box. And ultimately we know that never works, because people will always push back against that. There are some people who will go in that pattern, they'll be okay with it and do what they want to do, or whatever, or do what they feel that they, you know, is best, or whatever, listen. And then there's always going to be people who won't. And I think that right now, I don't think we have the ability to have true leadership right now. And I think that this is what it is. This is what all these planets are showing us. I mean, as we go through 2022, it's showing us where there's a lot of weaknesses, especially in leadership in the world. And that is what Jupiter, I think, will really start to point at as well. I mean, so we look at the personal opinions and how we're sort of presenting ourselves and having good ideas and using them in the world to make a better world, to make better patterns, to make, you know, things that will stand the test of time. And it can also be even for predicting the future, because patterns can predict future. That's how we know that things are going to happen. It happened like this and this year, and now it's going to be brought back to the forefront, or we will see some sort of an iteration of it. But ultimately this is like, in the bigger scheme of human design, this is the global, they call it the global cycle is changing and shifting and moving. In 2027, we have a brand new global cycle. And this global cycle says, you, not anybody else, you are your best hope for the future. And that is the key that we all have to take with us, put it in our pocket, and keep opening new doors of our lives, because we have all been put in this position where we are always looking to somebody else to tell us what we should do. Look to yourself. You have all the answers, you know?
Just phenomenal, and so true as well. So this whole thing about self-sovereignty, absolutely. When you talked about Jupiter rules kings, right? Rulers, people that are leaders, etc. Coming into the sign of Aries, I kind of feel like a lot of us, and just to echo what you said, a lot of us are going to expect the leaders to show up. So you can't be just a figurehead anymore, right? And this is one thing. I love our monarchy. You know, I was born here, first place that opened my eyes. So I'm a little bit partial, but it is what it is. I like the idea of it, because when I think of the old kings and queens, when war came, when anything happened, they were at the front. I will be there with you. I will roll up my sleeves. I'll get in the trenches and we will do this together. Not a case of, well, I'm just going to sit in the palace, nice, you know, cozy and warm, sipping tea while you guys go out and handle everything. So I totally agree with you. And I love what you mentioned with these two cards, because these are actually two of my favorites in the deck. The 43, just because I remember when you sent them to me, you were like, this reminds me of you. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And so I always tell that story when I pull this card, actually. And the 23. So the 23 energy, I see this as the visionary aspect of Jupiter, where Jupiter does have that sort of visionary, future-focused orientation. And the message behind this card is, how do you bring the castle out of the globe and into reality? Well, the gate 43, as I understand it, is that you act. When you see something that you feel or that you know, that's going to be big. This is the next idea. That's the path that I need to take. That gut instinct that says to you, this is going to be huge. You act on it immediately, even if you don't have it fully formed, which you probably won't, because, you know, at this point, it's just an idea or a vision that you have that feels like the right thing to follow. So yeah, I love that. I think it's brilliant, and it really speaks to a lot of the way that a lot of the ways that I do things with my impulsive self.
And I'm going to just throw in one more really cool thing. Steve Jobs, as I said, gate 43 hanging. So in other words, he didn't have the, because the gate 43 is what we call an ajna gate, or an area where we get clarity, marinates, takes time. It's always there, but eventually they say with mutation, it comes on and it goes off. So in other words, you get a pulse. This is it. and then it goes off. And so half of our time is in this waiting period. When is, I know there's something, and then eventually it says, oh, here it is, catch it. It is like, okay, so you move on, or you don't catch it because you get so frustrated and you don't want to catch it anymore. So that's why we need patience for this, right? But the thing about Steve Jobs, he had a gate 43. He started working with Steve Wozniak. 2343 gave him the access to the throat to speak with the words he wanted. And when they actually started the company of Apple, it was when the nodes, or our background frequency, was 2343, as it is now. Wow. So I really feel that we have a lot of potential, like within the next year or two, where things are going to start to happen. Now, remember, this is something that we have to be patient with, because this is not overnight energy. This is something we have the idea, we have that concept, we have that spark, but we need to start working with it to come to, you may not have all the details, but now you're starting to try and bring in the details, to wait for the details, the things that you need to do. And that's where we get the 1762, which brings all those details. It is mutative energy. The way human design works is you have mutative energy where exactly. The 1762, it goes right to the throat from the ajna. Again, that it's this clarity. But the way human design works is we have this mutative, this brand new spark of information, or this spark that we've never seen before. It's unique. Then this spark has to be brought over to the collective, and they have to make a fire with it. And that's why it's so time consuming, but also you have to have a lot of patience in order to be able to get your mutative ideas across, because nobody wants to listen to you. Nobody wanted to listen to Steve Jobs. Whether you like him or not, that is not the point. He left a legacy that nobody can deny. And we know that there's so much of him, or his creations, and the people that worked with him creations around, that we know. I mean, you only have to say, Apple, and everybody knows what it is. And it's not the fruit, right? It's an apple. It's apple. So, but he had a spark, and he had to bring it to the collective. He was thrown out of his own company because they didn't get him. But when people get you, when all the lines are intersecting, that's when magic can happen. And that's when people can start to go, oh yeah, this person actually really knows what they're talking about. And bang, suddenly you have something amazing. So if we have patience and let these things marinate and wait for the right people to listen to us and hear what we have to say, then magic can happen.
Yeah, I love it. I'm so here for it. Awesome. All right, so shall we get into some card breakdowns for the signs and talk about how they're going to be affected? So as always, guys, whenever I'm talking about astrology, I'm always using whole sign tropical astrology. That way it speaks to me better. For all of these, you want to be checking your ascendant. That's going to be the most accurate on the day-to-day sort of ground and even bodily level. Your sun sign comes next. That's also going to be important, but it's more for like the larger or longer sort of legacy of your life. And then the moon sign, it's a little deeper, and we tend to see the moon sign stuff show up in our sort of deep personal lives, our relationships with our partner, our relationships with our parents, our relationships with ourselves on the inside, our self-talk, etc. So let's start with, obviously, Aries. This is Aries moving through your first house. So before we get into that, actually, I would like to bless my decks of cards with all forms of love, light, peace, prosperity, and abundance. And I pray that the messages that come through are ultimately clear and concise, and they help us all on our paths to our highest vibrational good. So I'm going to shuffle both decks, and I just want you to say when for me, Denise, and then I will take from the top.
When.
And the second one.
When.
Okay, so those are ready. Aries, this is going to be a first house transit for you. This is moving through the house or the space in your chart that represents you, your identity, your body. Jupiter being an expansive energy, if you're not careful, this can bring, make the waistline a little bit bigger, and it can also bring you. So remember what we talked about with the body and proliferation. This is a time where you really do want to be looking after your physical health and vitality. channel that Jupiter energy into doing something active, especially as an Aries, right? This is the time to use that. It can also help you understand what the path is that you're ready to really start taking through life, or carving a new one for yourself. So if you suddenly have bigger or longer term ideas about how you want to move through life, it wouldn't be a surprise. Take that and run with it. Be okay with it. Be in it as much as you possibly can, and embody that sovereignty kind of energy. Your destiny card is the Magician. So I love this for you because it's giving you an understanding that you really are in charge. You really are in control with this transit. I always say to people that when something happens in your first house, maybe not total control, because, you know, the planets are gods after all, but we have a modicum. We get like a little bit of leeway to say, okay, well, you know what, if we're going left, I want to go in style. Right? So you kind of get to steer it just a little bit. The Magician card is really asking you to claim that brilliance and put it into something. This is about taking the thought and channeling that power into the real world. You've got this with the King of Cups. This could be a really powerful time for understanding your own emotions, changing your own emotional patterns, or even really up-leveling or upgrading your EQ. This could be a very powerful time for you to do some sort of healing, especially on that physical level as well, but also addressing some of maybe your deeper wounds. This could be a really powerful time for that. And a King of Cups or a water sign male could also feature in that journey for you. For Taurus, this is going to be moving through your 12th house. Lots to say about a 12th house transit, but I will start with the good stuff. Jupiter moving through your 12th house. When Jupiter moves through the 12th, that's true guardian angel energy. When he's in there, he does good work and offers what I call like a protective, like an angel's wing. But that being said, don't rely on it, because the moment you say, well, you know, I can be a bit reckless now because Jupiter's in my 12th house, that's probably the moment at which he's going to stand back and say, yeah, you know what, I'm going to let you take this one. So think about it in that regard. Jupiter moving through the 12th is going to spiritualize and enhance your dreamscape, may also bring a need for more sleep. The quality of sleep that you get might be, you know, better at this moment in time. Anything that happens in our 12th also magnifies and brings to light our deep, I call this the collective closet. So that space where you shove all of that stuff in your psyche down to the bottom or in the back of the closet, this is where we find it. Because Jupiter is offering a protective element here, if you use this transit to do some kind of therapy or really delve into your past, or, you know, some of your privacy challenges or issues, you can do so in a way that's safe, but also really effective, which could be wonderful. For your destiny card, you have the Devil card. Addictions, patterns of addictions, where we trip ourselves up. And with the Devil card, this is about what we really get obsessed with and can't or won't let go of. And so this really speaks to me of a 12th house transit. You could find yourself going the other way with it. Remember, Denise said, like, this will go, it can go either way. And so if it's happening in the 12th, you could say, well, you know, these are my vices, these are the things that I do to escape or whatever, I'm going to lean into that. And with Jupiter being an energy of excess, you could take this too far, so be careful. For clarification, you have the 8 of Cups. Now, I like this because if we put it round like this could literally be you walking away from or releasing whatever it is that excess, whatever that escapist tendency is. This could give you the opportunity to say, you know what, usually I'd reach for the bottle. Usually I'd binge on sugar. That's me. I'm not a Taurus, but that's me. You know, whatever your vice or your crutch would usually be, you have now the ability to walk away from it, providing you're willing to dig into that 12th house stuff and release what's creating the need for that thing. Feel free to chime in or chuck anything else in if you.
No, you got it perfectly, and that was my ascendant. So I was listening carefully, going, "Yes, I like sugar."
I hear you. I hear you. All right, for Gemini, this is happening for you in your 11th house. Friendships, social networks, how you connect to the wider world, groups, group associations is all found in this space. And this could actually be a really nice time for you guys, because Jupiter could be expanding your reach, the way that you connect to the world, the way that you interact with people. People could see you as potentially a little bit more sovereign, or maybe, as Denise said, like somebody who really knows what they're talking about. Be sure, because your destiny card for this transit is the Hermit, you have to make sure that you know what you're talking about. The Hermit is an expert, make no bones about it. Yes, he might be wearing a raggedy old cloak, but trust me, this dude knows his stuff. This is, after all, the totem of Virgo. So if you're going to do this and you're going to put something out there, especially if you want benefactors, which is 11th house stuff, people to really kind of say, yeah, you know what, I'm going to put you on. I'm going to share your stuff here. I'm going to give you an opportunity to expand what you're doing. You have to come with the goods. Be prepared to back it up. And you get this with the 3 of Pentacles. My dear Geminis, it looks like a lot of you are about to level up and become teachers. Usually I would say you're going to school, but because it's the Hermit with the 3 of Pentacles, I almost get the sense that this is about you owning your own brilliance and kind of saying, well, actually, you know what, Raf? I am an expert in this field. I do know my stuff in this area. So whatever you're willing and ready to share, be ready to teach it, be ready to take it into that next level where you become the tutor, where you become the Hermit, let's say. For Cancer, this is happening in your 10th house. So this is all about your career, your public status, how you show up in the world. Are you married? Are you single? Are you a business owner? Are you a farmer? Are you retired? Whatever it might be. This is the most public place in the chart, and it's the you that is presented to the world that everybody sees. So as an example, when people think of, radiant reality, this mugshot is what they think of, right? And so that's my public persona. So I hope that gives you an understanding. Because Jupiter is moving through the sign of Aries, it's at a square to you. So it is a little bit of a challenging aspect. But this has the potential to really expand how you show up in the world, and it could do wonders for your career, for the way that people see you, because it is an expansive energy. For those of you that are single, or maybe even those of you that are in long-term relationships, that relationship could cross the threshold, and so suddenly you go from being just partnered or a boyfriend or a girlfriend to being a spouse. So that kind of expansion could be really nice, but growth in the career nonetheless. For this, you have the Temperance card. As soon as I turned this card over, the first line that came to my mind was, fame is a fickle friend. And this really feels like that. So remember, we talked about Jupiter being able to give, abundance of the good stuff, but maybe some of the challenges as well. How you engage with the drama of the world, and how you, maybe not necessarily even the opinion that you give or that you hold, but how you present that is going to be everything for you during this transit. You have that, with the Hermit. The Hermit's been very active today in personal readings and stuff as well. So I'm intrigued by this. The fact that you have this with the Temperance card, in a lot of ways, this is you shucking the shell. Right, Cancer has that, they've got the shell where they can retreat and hide. Anything that's happening in the 10th, you can't hide from, because it's the most public you. And because you've got this with that Hermit card and the Temperance card, it's like finding the balance between how you show up in the world and how much you're in demand, and how much you need to recharge and refocus in order to check in with yourself about whether you do believe what you're saying or not. Leo, this is happening in your 9th house. This is a trine energy to your sun, moon, or ascendant, whichever one you're listening for. And so that's a really nice harmonious aspect. Jupiter rules Sagittarius, which is the 9th sign. So Jupiter being in the 9th has an affinity for that house and does really good work there. The 9th house is very lucky. It's also very future orientated and focused, and it really gives you an understanding of where you connect to the vastness that is the universe. This is, after all, in the ancient astrology known as the house of God. And the way that I understand that is it's where you kind of reach up to the heavens, but the heavens reach down to meet you halfway. And so when you connect, you get this idea of, I don't really know why I wanted to do that. It just felt right, and it happens. This is also the house of travel, foreign culture, distant places, also the house of higher education, philosophy, and learning. So I expect this transit to really expand your mind, and maybe as a fixed sign, it might get you to sort of realize where you have been too rigid and where you can, again, kind of let go of how you've done things up until now. It's like, in my mind's eye, the image that I'm seeing is a cup being emptied. And what happens when the cup is emptied? It can be filled with something new. Ah, nice. Leo, you have the Sun card. Woohoo! So this is really nice. And the reason being is I kind of get the feeling that this transit is going to show you where and how you can elevate. And it's also, I kind of feel that this is going to be, it's like the promise of blessings to come. So maybe this transit won't give you all of it, but it will give you enough of a taste to say, okay, if I keep showing up in this way, I can have more of that, and I'm here for it. You've got this with the Four of Cups. I guess the thing that I want to say is don't get greedy. Don't allow yourself to be tricked into, well, this is showing up, so, I deserve it. Don't go into that space. Keep working even when the results are starting to show up. For Virgo, this is happening in your 8th house. I love an 8th house transit because it's deep, it is challenging, it's raw, but it's so transmutive. They can be challenging, I'm not going to lie, but again, Jupiter in the 8th house truly offers a healing balm. When Venus or Jupiter move through the 8th, this is really great stuff that happens on those deeper levels. And it offers, because Jupiter actually represents healing as well, this could be a time where you are addressing some deep sort of inner psychological understanding or outlook. It could be where you're shifting your focus and your belief structure around anything to do with not just your past, but also maybe things around intimacy. It could just as easily, though, be where you have considered yourself as less than in or through the eyes of others. Remember, the 8th house is about other people's money and resources. So the value that you have in others' eyes is being changed. And Jupiter is coming in to say, no, the way that you see yourself isn't that. Let's, scrub that up and make it shiny and new. This could be wonderful for money, finances, and resources, especially where you're working in collaboration with others. And for this, you have the Hierophant card. Are you ready, willing, or able, or even prepared to re-establish yourself on the inner plane so that you can walk a path that you've never walked before? I say that because this is the energy of initiation, and initiation is an 8th house thing because it talks about the occult, the spiritual sciences, as I like to call them. So this, for me, really feels like your inner belief structure is changing so that you can say, okay, it's time to step onto a new path here. I'm excited about that. And you've got this with the Empress, right? So look at that. I mean, the Empress is Venus. And the fact that you have this with the Hierophant, this tells me that this transit for you guys, certainly this portion of it, I don't know so much about the 2023 part, but certainly this taster that you get, it really says to me that it's going to be smoother than you think. So when you hear like, oh, 8th house transit crap, it's not going to be that. I think it's going to be this wow, isn't this like a really weird, kooky, but amazing sort of night garden that, you know, like in Avatar, you know, it's like really weird and psychedelic, but it's absolutely stunning. I get the feeling that this transit is going to be that for you guys. So that could be really nice. For Libra, this is in your 7th house. And so therefore this is an opposition. I get the feeling that this is going to offer agency or more agency to the others in your life. So partnerships, relationships, business collaborators, because it is in the 7th house as well. And I know for women, Jupiter represents the husband. So for some of you, if you're single, this could be a time where you are, you know, getting into a relationship where maybe some of your relationships are growing. If this isn't about an intimate or one-on-one relationship, this could literally be about your business collaborations or a new network. More on the one-on-one sort of side of things is coming in for you. But the reason I say this is because I kind of get this feeling it's going to be like the, you know, like Hansel and Gretel, like the breadcrumbs, like you'll find one person and then they'll lead you to another, and it will just be this series of people that come along. So it's going to be like a constant stream of new people that come in that really change your understanding of how to interact with everybody. And I almost want to say to a lot of the Librans as well, like you guys understand this anyway, but how you speak to, you know, a 70-year-old grandmother is not how you're going to speak to a 20-year-old who's, you know, in college, right? You're going to have to find a way to read the room and read the people. For you guys, you have the High Priestess. So yeah, I mean, potential for clandestine relationship, absolutely. Because it's Jupiter, I will say Jupiter is about justice. So just be very, very conscious that whatever you try to hide in that regard could find its way to the light. It also tells me that your intuition about, like when we talk about closing the sale with a one-on-one, so if you're a coach or something like that, you may have like an intuitive, yes, this person will buy, no, this person won't. Try not to use it for nefarious purposes. Oh, wow, okay. So we have a double up. The Two of Swords coupled with the High Priestess represents true psychic energy. We're talking about somebody that has like a genuine gift. It wouldn't surprise me if you have this, certainly around partnerships or collaborators, etc. This could also be a time where somebody who has a genuine psychic gift may be of use to you. With that Two of Swords as well, this is a really good time to think about where your blind spots are when it comes to relationships. For Scorpio, this is happening in your 6th house. So even more so than the Aries, your health needs to be a 100% priority here, because we're talking about in the 6th house, we're talking about your physical body, your health and well-being, how you really maintain the machinery that looks after all of who you are. And so for me, when we're talking about Jupiter in the 6th, this has a potential to proliferate some illness or some challenge, because the 6th house is a challenging house. That being said, you could make really wonderful strides with or around healing, especially if it's things like alternative or ancient methods. You could get a lot out of that. Also, this is about employees and or pets. So for some of you, maybe the life is expanding through the life of a pet. With Jupiter, it's going to bring more than one. All right, so whatever you're getting a lot of them, especially for those of you, I mean, going back to Libra just for a second, the High Priestess is the number 2 and the Two of Swords is also the number 2. So Jupiter being that expansive energy, maybe there's more than one partner that is a possibility as well. For Scorpio, I also wanted to say about your employees, etc. This could be a time where there's more harmony with those things, but you are being asked to be more fair, and you will have to be a lot more upfront and above board. Not that you're not already. With this, you have the Moon card. So in a lot of ways, this could bring things, people, or maybe even supports in the day-to-day life from the past. So it's like the past, or echoes from the past come up. For those of you that are, if you've ever had like a chronic illness, etc., you could be having what I would consider to be phantom echoes of this. So it's not the thing itself, but it's like I thought this had come back. So watch out for that. You've got this with the Hanged Man. So straight away, the first thing that I want to say to you is that's a lot of water. I'm not a doctor, can't give you medical advice, but anywhere water retention could be a possibility that comes up here, especially with Jupiter, that more things growing or expanding, etc. Things like fungus, all of that kind of stuff. Look after yourself on those fronts, especially because the moon card is Pisces ruled and the Hanged Man is Neptune. So that's a lot of water. So just watch out for this because it's quite a nebulous kind of energy. For Sagittarius, this is happening in your 5th house, giving a nice trine to your sign. I like this for you guys because Jupiter is your ruler after all. And in the 5th house, this is bringing children. But again, it's Jupiter. Jupiter loves children anyway. And being in the 5th house, this could be, we're pregnant and it's twins, or it's triplets, even. So really just be conscious. If you want more children, this is absolutely a wonderful transit for that. If you're not at that stage of life, or you're past it, this could be projects. It could be things that you fall in love with, but things that you want to love into being. And that's how I see like our projects and our creative ideas. Like when you have that, oh my God, this would be amazing. And you get excited about it and you get carried away with it and you talk too fast and all of that, you get jittery about it. That's what it feels like to fall in love as well. So this can bring romance, it can bring children, it can bring an abundance of creative pleasure and treasure. So this could be really nice for you guys. I would probably say as well, because the 5th house can be speculative gambling, and it tends to be quite a lucky house, providing you don't have any underlying issues or an addictive personality, you can make a few well-calculated kind of, you know what, I'll take a little punt. I'll put a little something here or a little something there you could do well with. So your destiny card, you've got the Empress. So this to me is like the most fertile card in the deck. So children, babies, it's a total possibility for those of you that are at that age and still functioning. Outside of that, it tells me that your projects, ideas, and creative endeavors will be so fruitful. And it's like, you're not doing it for the money. Like, that's great. It's wonderful that it gives results, but this was just fun to do. I just loved it. I enjoyed this process. Oh, wow. And you got this with the 10 of Cups. I mean, for those of you that are single, that is love energy. For those of you that are partnered or married, this is the honeymoon coming back around. You get a second bite at that apple, which could be fantastic. And the 10 of Cups with with the Empress, that is a home or a feeling in the home that makes everybody truly smile. It's really wonderful. Just great, great news. For Capricorn, this is happening in your 4th house. So technically a square, but even still, expanding the home, right? So again, this can also bring children because after all, it expands the home, right? What are the ways that your home expands? New people come into it. I like this because it suggests that some of you could be working on the home. So maybe you decide to extend it, maybe you decide to enhance it or beautify it in some way. It would usually be the first part though, because it's Jupiter, you're making it bigger. Because this is the house of your roots and your family and also an occult house, this could be a powerful time of really connecting to your heritage, to really understanding, and especially your patrilineal heritage. Who was your father? Who was his father? What did the men in my life, in my history, give me? How does that show up in me? Is it in my features? Is it in the way that I look? Is it in the way that I speak? This could see you really discovering something about the masculine energy. And I'm talking about the polarity here. How does that masculine energy show up within me? How am I the pinnacle or the extension of that masculine energy that's been passed down to me? Because it's Jupiter as well, I would probably say this, and it's weird because you would, although yes, I can see how the 10th house represents legacy, I feel like the 4th house transit of Jupiter will bring more of this. What do I want to pass on? You know, now that I understand who I am and where I've come from, what do I want to give to the next generation? For this, you have the Strength card. I think this kind of goes against the grain. And I think for a lot of you, this may be a time where you open your heart and you say, okay, now that I understand who I am, where I come from, what am I really ready to take a leap of faith on when it comes to my family, when it comes to my home? So for some of you, this might be a change in home. For some of you, this could be that you're moving to a different place because of work, etc., in order to get more or gain more in the material world. But it brings some kind of upheaval because the Strength card, it always requires, like, you know, like a deep breath before you jump in. So you're having to kind of sit with it. And you've got this with the Queen of Swords. So for some of you, this may be a challenge or an issue that arises through or with the family. And remember as well, one thing that I haven't mentioned so far with Jupiter, it can be the law, you know, law and legal matters, especially forgot that with the 9th house. So this could be, you know, maybe some of you are working on or over something to do with an inheritance or an estate when we're talking about like specifically a home. That Queen of Swords, usually an air sign woman, so this might be somebody that you are interacting with, or certainly gets you to see or understand things from a different perspective because of knowledge that they give you. So this would be a really good time to look into your family tree. For Aquarius, this is in your 3rd house. So all to do with your day-to-day routines. And I see this more as like your locality, and not just like your locality is where you are. It's the websites that you visit every single day. It's that column that you like to read. It's the neighbor that you say good morning to when you go out for your coffee, or, you know, all of that stuff. It's also your siblings, how you interact with your neighbors, etc. This could also bring, I feel like the proliferation of Jupiter will very likely see you getting a lot more involved in your local area. So you're likely to be traveling more, you know, flitting about here, there, and everywhere. Maybe for some of you as well, you could realize that you have a sibling through this. It's not an eclipse, so it's probably not in that regard, but this, yeah, I would say this could definitely enhance sibling relationships. Finally, with the 3rd house, it's skills, things that you do with your hands, where you need to be nimble of mind. And because it's Jupiter, I would say for some of you, this could be a time where you decide to go back to school, or where you decide to study more or gain new insight into skills. You have the Judgment card. This is, for me, a card of massive change. And so you are being really upgraded or up-leveled in the skills that you have. But for some of you, this is you dusting off an old skill that you already have. It comes back into the fold where you kind of get to say, hey, yeah, I'm actually kind of good at this, right? Like you get to dust it off and it comes up anew. You've got this with the 4 of Swords. I would say for all of you Aquarians, Sun, Moon, or Ascendant, start a meditation practice now, because it's that day-to-day stuff, the things that you do every day. You can use this to your advantage. And that 4 of Swords has a very powerful contemplative energy about it. And with the Judgment card, it kind of says that some of the changes that happen for you internally, or even with the skills that you have or that you're bringing back in, could really have a profound effect if you hone them through honing your mind. I really like that, because it's kind of like that moment where you look at something and think, you know, I tried to do this for years and it never worked. Nobody wanted to hear it. Nobody wanted to see it. You know, I was never good enough, or I was always passed over. And suddenly you do this again, you look at it from a different perspective. Maybe you do some meditation or some mindfulness, and then suddenly you're like, this is the missing ingredient. Bam. And all of a sudden it's just everywhere. You're in demand. People just want, you know, for whatever skills you have. It could be very exciting. Finally, last but definitely not least, Pisces. This is happening in your second house of money, finances, your savings, the money that you earn from the work that you do, the business that you have. It's also the house of self-esteem, and your worth and your value are held here. And I always say to people, how much money you can earn is in direct proportion to how much you believe you are worth. So when you sit, and you know, this isn't to say that people in third world that are poor, etc. I don't get into all of that. What I'm talking about is people that are in you know what I mean, like a certain sphere, right? So how much money we can earn or generate is linked to how we see ourselves. And so this could be an upgrading of that. And I mean, it's Jupiter in the second. What more do you need, right? Expansion of your money. This could be a time where if you allow your mind to think bigger and broader, and also to get a little bit serious about it, because Pisces energy tends to be, you know, you guys are, well, you know, it is what it is. I'll just let it be. Jupiter is a lot more focused than that. And if you allow yourself to be a bit more focused, you can really grow your resources. So your destiny card is the Death card. And I actually like this, especially because the Death card rules Scorpio, which is ruled by Pluto. When you couple Pluto and Jupiter in astrology, you get the millionaire maker, right? It's called it's like extreme wealth, let's say. And the word Pluto actually comes from, you know, means rich or wealth. The Death card for me is the end of your financial outlook or understanding up until this point. So it doesn't suggest like anything's going anywhere, but I really feel like how you viewed money, how you viewed yourself previously, that comes to an end now. It's all over. And with that, you have, of course, you have the Four of Wands, right? And this is celebrations, this is moving ahead. And it's also a period of celebration, but also a period of respite. And the interesting thing is you've got the Death card, which is number 13, 1 and 3 gives you 4. You've also got the second 4 here. 2 4s technically represents insomnia. So maybe that could be a part of this for you, but the Four of Wands coupled with the Death card, I actually see this as you understand, or you coming into a new foundation of your own resources and really getting very clear on that was my financial history, but that is my financial destiny, and really understanding the difference between those two things. So that is how this is going to speak to all of you guys on, you know, an astrological level and a taroic level. Denise, is there anything you want to add to this or open up?
No, I think you you gave a lovely perspective of it. I was listening intently for all the people I know. I was like, okay, this was but it's yeah, it's exciting to imagine all the things that could happen, because you know, yes, there are obstacles, there are things that might show up, but there's also this potential for really good things to happen. And if we're open to it, you know, never know what shows up.
Yeah, absolutely. And it really is that, guys. You know, I talk about this a lot in the readings that I do weekly. It's never always going to be light and fluffy and rainbows, right? It's never going to always be that. And it can't be, because then we never really appreciate any of it and we don't really grow. You know, it's a rare person that that truly learns and develops from the happy times in their lives. You know, we can all pinpoint that awful moment in my life or that horrible person that did this, but it made me that and turned me into this. Not many of us can say like, oh yeah, you know, I remember that I had this one week where everything was great and I was totally happy and this is what I learned from it. these two things go hand in hand, and Jupiter isn't just luck and expansion and growth, as we've talked about. It can be challenging. It can grow the things that you don't want to grow and expand. And while there will be challenges, there is also potential, and that's all we ever really have.
Yeah, one foot in front of the other and just keep stepping forward. I mean, I was just thinking about that this morning as I was making my breakfast, which I've had the same breakfast for 5 years. I mean, that's what life is made of. It is just those little things that we just do every day. And you know, a lot of people say it's just boring. You know, we're always looking for something exciting, but being alive is exciting. And if every day was exciting, it wouldn't be exciting, you know, for that very reason. Just like you say, the yin and the yang, back in the front, we can't have one without the other. And yeah, there's potential for some beautiful things to show up. And again, let's just see how it plays out. But of anything, if I can say one thing, and I think that Jupiter is big, it's expansive, but it is also this presence that says, be your own authority, right? Be your own authority. And I think that that's a message we really need to start looking at ourselves for the answers, because we have them within us. And yes, if somebody tells you something and it makes sense, that's an answer you probably already had inside of you that you just kind of got confirmation on. And that's where I think we, you know, moving forward into the future, as Jupiter is going through and Saturn's going through and all those planets are making all these shifts and shifting the world all around us, because we have had an interesting 2022 so far, and we're not even halfway in. So just keeping your eyes open, being your own best authority, checking it out, making sure that whatever people are saying is correct, especially with anything logical. And Jupiter does talk about the logical stuff with the gate 17. If it sounds interesting, if it sounds like something that's believable, check it out, see if it works for you, see if it is true. If it's true, then absolutely you can believe the opinions and the things that people are saying. But if you haven't done your due diligence and then something shows up that maybe it wasn't actually true after all, and you sort of put all your money in that thing that you thought was going to, and this could even be financial stuff, right? Because, you know, we do have anything, especially with anybody who's having any transits to their second house, which we were talking about, you know, Pisces and everything. It's, you know, you don't want to right now go on the opinion of anybody and just take it face value when Jupiter gets in there, and take it like face value and actually make some life shifting decisions based on that opinion. So make sure that, you know, because there is potential. Jupiter can be very convincing, in the fourth line, especially. It's called I think it's called the authoritarian, but I'm not 100% sure. But in the fourth line, it can be very convincing. They have that one idea and they're very specific about it. And you might just buy in, which is great if it's a good idea, but not so much if it hasn't been thought out and it's not actually the right idea for you.
Yeah, I love that. And absolutely it tracks, right? Think about what we've been saying throughout this whole video. When you think about Jupiter, you know, you're talking about wisdom, philosophy, you know, really getting into things and presenting things as best as they can be, but in the sign of Aries, which is all about the self. Don't forget to check in with you. Don't forget to check in with what you think, with what you feel. And I absolutely love what you said earlier about, you know, I actually like that, because it's like, if this transit gives you the key that you can put in your pocket, when you come up with a door or something, check that key is yours. Does it work here? No? Okay, then this isn't the right door. This isn't the right avenue for me. So yeah, check in with yourselves and really sit in your own sovereignty. Absolutely.
Yep.
Denise, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for agreeing to come on again. I look forward to the next video, which is going to be the Mercury retrograde. So keep an eye out for that. Remember, you can find Denise on YouTube. You can find her on Google via her website. And if you want to get a set of the Human Design Oracle deck cards, you can also find those on her website, which is
DeniseMathew.com.
all right.
Easy enough.
Yeah, and head over to